Do you want to write progress notes without actually having to write progress notes? It sounds too good to be true, but this AI progress note generator claims that it will save you hours of time and frustration each month. I've tested it out and I'm here to share the results with you. Hi, I'm Dr. Maelisa McCaffrey, founder of the free Private Practice Paperwork Crash Course, and today I am giving you my full review of the AI platform called Clinical Notes AI. This is part of our series reviewing a variety of AI progress note generators, and we're using the same criteria to review all of them. These criteria are: how does it actually work, pricing, potential integration with your current note-taking system or electronic health record, my favorite features, any cautions or concerns, and finally, how well does it actually write a progress note? Before we dive in, I want to give you my full disclaimer. I am not affiliated with Clinical Notes AI in any way. This is not any kind of ad, and I've chosen not to receive any compensation from any of these AI platform reviews. This is my own review from my perspective, and I recommend that you use it as one of the many pieces of information that you use in making your decision about whether or not to choose this platform. Okay, now that we have disclaimers out of the way, let's get into the actual review. So how does Clinical Notes AI actually work? It's pretty interesting. Option one is that it will transcribe your session, but unlike some of these other platforms, it doesn't actually record that session. So for example, you log into the system and allow it to listen in on your session with your client. It will then create a transcription of what's happening, but not record the audio. Instead, it creates a written summary, and then at the end, it will analyze the transcript it created. So you don't have to worry about it saving any of that information or actually recording sessions, but it does give a full written transcript. The other way you can use Clinical Notes AI is to dictate your note. And in the same way, it will then write down everything you've said and then analyze the summary of that. The cool thing is that it's a better form of dictation, so you can actually tell it things like, oh, I forgot to put this sentence in a different section, or I want to include these topics after the fact. So you can kind of talk to it like a person instead of just talking to it and having it write down literally everything you say. Now that all sounds pretty fancy, so how much does it cost? There are quite a few pricing options, and I'm just going to give you the overview, not like every little detail of what's included in all of these. But you can try it out for free for the first 10 sessions. After that, you can pay just $15 a month, and that will give you up to 20 live sessions that you can record. Then it goes to $30 a month for 40 live sessions, and for $50 a month, you get unlimited everything. Now, we'll link to Clinical Notes AI in the description of this video, so if you want to look at all of the details around the pricing options, you can check that out there. Our next criteria: how well will it integrate with your current note-taking system or your electronic health record? Well, basically, it's not going to integrate with it. You're going to use the copy-paste method, which, spoiler alert, is the case for most of these platforms at this point. It does give you the option to either download the progress note as a PDF, or you can easily copy-paste, and it has different sections in the note template, which we're going to talk about in a minute. You can either copy-paste just a section, or you can copy-paste the entire thing that it has produced for you. All right, so now what are some of my favorite features from using this product? One, I really like that they do emphasize consent from the client. So they specifically address this when you log in as the clinician, and also every time you're doing a note, it says that you have reviewed that with them and that the client has consented to using AI as part of the note-taking process. They also give you a template that is a form you can use with clients. And this is really great because it's something you can use to review with clients and see if they have any questions about the process and make sure that they consent to using AI as part of their record keeping before you actually start doing it. Another thing I like about Clinical Notes AI is that it's not actually recording your sessions, so there's no audio that's being saved, which I think could be a potential drawback for many clinicians needing to worry about whether or not that information is being deleted, as well as for clients who wouldn't want their actual session recorded. And as someone who is not really very good with dictation, I really like that it's more of a scribe system in their dictation feature. So you don't have to plan ahead what you're going to say and say it in a certain order. You can kind of skip around and just talk about what happened in your session if you want to use that dictation feature, and then it will know how to clean up what you have told it about the session. So you could just talk to your computer and throw out ideas, throw out quotes that maybe you wrote down on a piece of paper during the session, and just list them all off in whatever order you want, and then tell it where to put it, and it will do that for you. There are also lots of options for different types of note templates that you can use. I do think that this depends on the paid plan that you're using, but one of the fairly inexpensive paid plans did offer this, and you get a variety of templates, things like SOAP or DAP or GURP, or you can just use a bullet point summary. It will also create like a conversational summary. So it gives you lots of options of how you want to format the progress note. And if you've seen any of my other videos, then you know that I love it gives you the information in bullet points and it offers you a bullet point summary. You also have the option to include a diagnosis, which it will extract from that session and give you suggestions for, and you can include symptoms. And another thing I thought was really cool is it lets you describe the client however you want. So I typically say client just as a personal preference, but you could also say patient, and you could also say individual or student. I think all of those were options. Okay, so now let's get into some of the cautions and concerns. So one of the biggest things is that in order for you to be HIPAA compliant, even though Clinical Notes AI is a HIPAA secure system, for you to be HIPAA compliant while using it, you need to download a BAA, a Business Associate Agreement. However, at least at this point, while I'm reviewing Clinical Notes AI, they don't offer that right off the bat. You have to email them and ask for it. Now, when I emailed them, they gave it to me right away. It was the same day, but you just want to know that right away. You can't just go in and start using it until you've gotten that BAA from them and you've signed it. Another thing was that it did take a few minutes to generate the progress note. Again, none of these paid platforms that I have tested are nearly as fast as ChatGPT, but ChatGPT is not HIPAA secure, so we are not going to use that for our progress notes. Now, my biggest caution was actually that it generated a really long progress note. If you've seen my other videos, you know that I am using the Gloria session with Carl Rogers as an example of how it will write a progress note. Now, that session is only 30 minutes long, and I had like a 2.5-page progress note. I mean, when I say it created a summary, it was like a whole summary that was like half of a transcript. It's well organized, it's in bullet point format, it's fairly easy to read, but if it were me personally, I would probably cut out like half of that information. Another thing was that it did create a plan for a future session and assumed that a next session was happening, even though that was never discussed and none of that information was presented to the AI progress note generator. Now, this seems to be a common issue with a lot of these platforms and makes sense because they are meant for therapists who are seeing clients weekly, but it's something to pay attention to, that it is including that, assuming that will happen, and not necessarily because it did happen. On that note, the plan section was actually very long and had many, many bullet points to it, and that's a little concerning when you consider that there was actually no plan or no discussion in any way of a plan for how to move forward. And my last concern is that while all of these options for how to formulate the note and which sections to use in that template are amazing, and I love having options, my experience tells me that a lot of clinicians will sit and obsess over which sections to add and which sections might have this bullet point versus this bullet point, and end up spending a lot more time both actually writing the note, but also just thinking about what needs to go in the note. And the point of these platforms is to take a lot of that concern away from you. So let's talk about how well it actually wrote the progress note, and I'll give you my suggestions for which sections I would use. So I chose to use 2 different note templates for the same session so that we could compare them. I did one DAP note, which stands for Data Assessment and Plan, and one SOAP note, which stands for Subjective Objective Assessment and Plan. With each of those, I added a couple of the other options to see what those things did, like the conversational summary, individual summary, and bullet points. I already told you it created a really long progress note, so that was the case. The SOAP note I didn't do in bullet point form, so it was a little bit shorter. But again, when it's multiple paragraphs, you're still not getting a very readable progress note. So that was one of my biggest concerns with the two progress notes that I generated, is that they were pretty long. As most of these platforms do, it actually generated a very excellent summary. So if you're someone who tends to write more, or you have certain clients with whom you like to write more, I could see this being really beneficial. It also actually made suggestions for a diagnosis, and they were pretty spot on, and they actually gave a little bit of a rationale with it related to the symptoms that were listed in the note. I also liked that it did have a disclaimer that the clinician really needs to determine whether or not that diagnosis is appropriate. Now, because these progress note templates have so many options for what you can include, there is a lot of crossover. So I did find that a few of the sections in each of the progress notes were basically covering the exact same thing. For example, the data section, the bullet point summary, and the individual details section all included the same information, so you really only need to pick one of those. If I were using Clinical Notes AI to write my progress notes, I would do a DAP note, but I would add symptoms and the individual details. And then the only 4 sections I would actually use from the note would be assessment, plan, symptomatology, and individual details. To me, those 4 things would create an excellent summary and give you everything that you would need for both an insurance progress note and just a really good progress note in general. And I would still probably end up cutting out half of the information in those sections because, again, it's really detailed. So it's important that you do review what is in the progress note to determine if it's necessary to be in the progress note. There's always a balance of determining, is there too much or too little? And while I do think that adding more information is probably better than less, that's not always the case. So just make sure that you are actually reviewing the information in each progress note. Now, I know you want to see these progress notes for yourself, and you can. Just click on the link that will be in the description below, and I'll send you a copy of that DAP note and that SOAP note that Clinical Notes AI wrote for Carl Rogers' session with Gloria. It also includes my personal notes on it with some feedback on the more specific things in each progress note. Make sure you're subscribed to my channel so you get notifications about all of the other AI platform reviews that I'm doing. And if you've tested out any of these, please let us know what you think in the comments below. Happy writing!